The checkered floor stretches in black and white squares beneath Mia Wells' worn sneakers, each step a small echo in the 3:22 a.m. silence of Dante's diner. The neon signs hum their dying song, pink, then blue, then pink again, casting her face in alternating shades while her hands move on automatic, wiping down the counter for the third time tonight even though no one has sat there in hours. $17 sits folded in her apron pocket. $17 and 300,000 reasons to disappear. The foreclosure notice sits on her kitchen table at home, printed numbers that might as well be prison sentences. 5 days. The bank gave her 5 days before they own the small house where Emma sleeps with her stuffed rabbit, the house where her husband's voice still echoes in the hallway even though he has been gone for 14 months. The coffee maker gurgles and hisses. Mia pours a cup she cannot afford to drink, lets the steam rise into her face where no one can see the tremor in her jaw. The overnight shift pays minimum wage plus whatever tips the insomniacs and the desperate might leave behind. Tonight, the insomniacs stayed home. The desperate never came at all. Through the front window, the Miami night sprawls cold and clear, the kind of winter that northerners dream about and locals resent. December, and the air carries a sharpness that cuts through the smell of grease and old coffee. Every breath feels like inhaling glass. The back door crashes open. Mia's head snaps up. She knows this sound, the sound of the delivery entrance when someone forces it, when someone does not use the handle correctly because they are moving too fast or too angry or both. Her stomach tightens. She has learned to recognize the difference between accident and threat. This is threat. From the kitchen, she hears voices. A man's voice, low and controlled. Then another voice, younger, terrified. She knows that younger voice, it belongs to Marcus, the dishwasher who works the graveyard with her, a kid barely 21 who sends money home to his mother in Puerto Rico. Please, Marcus is saying. Please, I don't have it yet, but next week I can. Next week I break your fingers. This week I break your knees. Mia moves before her mind catches up with her body. She walks through the kitchen door into the freezing back alley where Derek Collins stands with his hand raised, his fist a stone at the end of a muscled arm. Derek, who owns half the buildings in this neighborhood. Derek, whose name appears on notices and eviction papers and threats that arrive in manila envelopes. Derek, whose presence in any room makes the air thick and difficult to breathe. Stop, Mia says. The word comes out steady, which astonishes her. Her hands shake, but her voice does not. The difference between the two is the only power she has left. Derek turns. He is a man built like a refrigerator, broad, cold, immovable. 48 years old, she heard someone say once, though his face looks older, weathered by the kind of cruelty that etches itself into skin. His suit costs more than Mia's monthly rent. Everything about him announces that he takes what he wants and no one says no. Go back inside, he tells her without looking at her directly, the way a person might dismiss a dog. Let him go, Mia says. This time Derek looks at her. His eyes are flat and grey and utterly without mercy. You work for tips, little widow. You do not work for me, and you do not speak to me. He knows she is a widow. Everyone in this neighborhood knows. The news traveled fast when Marcus told people, when the hospital sent the final bills, when the bank posted the foreclosure notice on her door like a scarlet letter. Mia steps between Derek and Marcus. It is the stupidest thing she has ever done. She knows this even as she is doing it. Derek's hand moves from raised to pointed, one finger extended like a weapon. You have 10 seconds to move before I move you. But in the shadows near the diner's entrance, someone else is watching. Matteo Conti stands perfectly still in the way that very dangerous men learn to stand, his shoulders set beneath a cashmere coat that costs more than Mia's entire house. He came to Dante's at 3:15 a.m. because the coffee here reminds him of his mother's kitchen from 40 years ago, before his father died, before the family business became a machine that consumed everything it touched. He comes here to sit in a booth and drink coffee and watch the city sleep. He was not watching Mia Wells until she stepped between Derek Collins and a frightened boy. Matteo's eyes are dark brown, almost black, with a scar that runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, a souvenir from a business dispute when he was 23 years old. He is tall, 6'2", with the broad shoulders of someone who learned to fight before he learned to negotiate. His hair is dark, silver threading through at the temples, and he moves through the world with the kind of deliberate control that comes from knowing exactly how much damage your hands can do. He watches Mia Wells straighten her spine even though fear lives in every line of her body. He watches her refuse to move. He watches Derek raise his fist. And something in Matteo Conti's chest recognizes the kind of courage that costs everything, because he has spent his entire adult life around men who would trade that kind of courage for survival, and he has never seen it until now, in a widow making $17 a night in a diner that smells like grease. The fist stops mid-descent. Matteo steps from the shadows into the pink neon light. When he moves, the sound of his footsteps carries the weight of his presence, measured, unhurried, the footsteps of a man who has never had to rush because the world waits for him. His men, Tony and Enzo, both standing outside in the black SUV parked at the curb, would recognize this walk. It is the walk that precedes very bad things for very specific people. Derek turns. Recognition flashes across his face like a shock. "Signor Conti," he says, and his voice changes, becomes something smaller, something that begs. "Derek," Matteo says. His voice is deep and carries no inflection, which is somehow worse than anger. "You are on my street. You are threatening a person who serves me coffee at 3 a.m. You are doing this directly in front of my eyes." "I didn't know." "I know what you did not know," Matteo says. He steps closer, and Derek steps back, and the choreography of power plays out in the frozen alley. "You did not know that this woman interests me. You did not know that one of my men has been watching this neighborhood. You did not know that your name has come across my desk 3 times this month with complaints about extortion and threats." Derek's face is bleaching white. "Senior, I apologize, I will not." "Go," Matteo says. Derek goes. He moves fast, practically running toward the street, his expensive shoes slapping against the concrete. Within seconds, his car peels away from the curb with a sound like tearing metal. Matteo turns to Marcus. "Are you hurt?" Marcus shakes his head, unable to speak. "Go home. Send your mother $500 from me. Tell her to light a candle. Tell her her son is under my protection now." Marcus nods and runs. The back door slams behind him, leaving only silence and the sound of wind moving through the alley like something living. Matteo looks at Mia Wells, really looks at her, with the full weight of his attention. She is small, maybe 5'4", with dark hair pulled into a braid that has started to fall apart from the night's work. Her uniform is a pale pink, the kind of pale pink that fades after too many washings. Her eyes are green and they are currently staring at him with the expression of a person who has just made a terrible mistake and knows it. "What is your name?" he asks. "Mia," she says. Her voice is barely a whisper now, the bravery she used on Derek completely spent. "Mia Wells." "You should not have stepped between us," Matteo says. "Derek would have broken your bones." "He was going to break his," Mia says, gesturing toward where Marcus disappeared. "I couldn't let." She stops. She does not finish the sentence. She does not need to. Matteo studies her face in the neon light. He sees the exhaustion that lives in her bones, the kind of exhaustion that comes from working double shifts and counting pennies and wondering how you will feed your child tomorrow. He sees the bruises on her wrists, barely visible beneath her uniform sleeves, old bruises that have faded to the color of weak tea. "Go back inside," he says gently. "I will wait for my coffee." But what Matteo Conti does not know is that Derek Collins answers to his own brother, the man who betrayed the Conti family to enemies 12 years ago, the man Matteo allowed to live when he should have ordered him dead, the man whose betrayal cost Matteo everything he loved. And Derek has just made a critical mistake by standing in front of the wrong woman at the wrong hour. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Now, let us go back to the beginning to understand how Mia Wells, a widow drowning in debt she did not create, came to work the graveyard shift at a diner that could barely afford to pay her. Let us go back to the moment her life fractured, to the decisions that led her here, to the $17 in her apron and the 5 days ticking away like a countdown to oblivion. 15 hours before Matteo Conti watched Mia Wells step between Derek Collins and a dishwasher, she was counting coins on her kitchen table at 4:44 in the morning. $17. That was all. 17 individual bills and coins arranged in a line like the last soldiers in a dying army. A 10. For ones. 3 quarters. 2 dimes. 1 nickel. 2 pennies. Each one accounted for. Each one necessary. Her apartment was the kind of small that made sound echo wrong. 1 bedroom where Emma slept under a quilt Mia's mother had stitched 30 years ago, the fabric worn thin enough to see daylight through it if you held it up. The kitchen was barely large enough for 1 person to turn around in. The stove had a burner that didn't work. The refrigerator hummed a sound like a creature in pain. Mia sat at the table with her phone glowing in the darkness, the cursor blinking on the spreadsheet she updated every morning. Rent due in 5 days, $2,800. Electric bill, $179. Water, $42. Food for the week, she had budgeted $110, but that was before Emma needed new shoes because her toes were touching the end of the old ones. She pulled the eviction notice from the envelope again even though she had already read it 17 times. The paper had begun to tear at the fold from handling it so many times. To the occupants of 412, Maple Street Unit 4, this property is scheduled for foreclosure on or about 30 days from the date of this notice. The outstanding balance is $22,416. $22,000. The number was so large it stopped meaning anything. It became abstract. A number you saw in movies, not a number that applied to a real kitchen in Miami where a widow was counting coins in the dark. Mia had worked for 3 years as a waitress at Danny's all-night diner. Double shifts. 6 days a week. 12 to 14 hours of standing on her feet, carrying plates that burned her hands, serving coffee to men who looked through her like she was glass. The pay was $5.45 per hour plus tips, and the tips came when they came, which was almost never. On a good night she made $80. On a bad night, $20. The life insurance payout from Marcus had been $40,000. It sounded like salvation when the insurance agent said it. Enough to start over, she had thought. Enough to breathe. But the debts had been much worse than she knew. Medical bills from Marcus's final 3 months, $15,000. Funeral costs, $6,000. And then the debts Marcus had hidden from her, credit cards she didn't know existed, a loan from a man named Derek Collins for $8,000 that came due the month after Marcus died. Interest compounded. Missed payments accumulated. Letters arrived, then phone calls, then men in suits who stood on her porch and spoke in voices that sounded like ice. The $10,000 remaining after the insurance payout disappeared in 90 days. She had been working 12-hour shifts every single day for 3 years straight. Never a day off. Never a sick day. Never an hour to sit and think about the fact that she was drowning. Emma was 6 years old. She had her father's dark eyes and her mother's ability to smile at nothing and find it beautiful. She had no idea that the apartment they lived in was being repossessed. She thought the reason her mother sometimes didn't eat dinner was because Mommy wasn't hungry, not because Mommy had given her portion to Emma. Mia reached across the table and pulled out the other envelope. This one was smaller. It came from St. Augustine Academy, the private school where Emma had tested into the gifted program. The letter said Emma had been accepted. The tuition was $12,000 per year. Mia had not told Emma. She had not told anyone. She had simply carried the letter in her purse for 2 weeks like a prayer. She folded the eviction notice and the acceptance letter and placed them both in the same envelope. Then she placed that envelope under the kitchen sink, behind the cleaning supplies where she kept the other documents that terrified her. The alarm on her phone buzzed. 5:15 a.m. Time to wake Emma, get her ready for her public school, the one that cost nothing, the one where she was 2 years ahead of her grade level but where the teachers told Mia not to worry, Emma would be fine, and then go to work. Mia stood up. Her feet had begun to hurt in a new way over the past months. It was not the sharp pain of standing all day anymore. It was a dull ache that lived in her bones, the kind of pain that came from exhaustion so complete that your body forgot how to recover. She walked to the bedroom and sat on the edge of Emma's bed. Even in sleep, Emma was smiling. Her small hand reached out and found Mia's wrist. "Good morning, Mommy," Emma whispered, not yet awake but sensing somehow that her mother was there. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mia whispered back. "Time to get up." Emma's eyes opened slowly. She was wearing the pajamas that had belonged to a neighbor's daughter, hand-me-downs that Mia had washed so many times the fabric had become soft as skin. "Will you braid my hair today?" Emma asked. "Of course," Mia said. She ran her fingers through Emma's dark hair. "Whatever you want." By 7:22 a.m., Mia had walked Emma to the bus stop 3 blocks away. The morning was cold in a way that felt like punishment. The wind came off the ocean and cut through Mia's jacket, a grey thing from 5 years ago that had seen better days, and she held Emma's hand tighter, not because Emma needed it but because Mia needed to feel something warm. The bus came. Mia watched it pull away with Emma's face in the window, her braids tied with the ribbon that Mia had found in a donation box at church. Then she turned and walked in the opposite direction toward Danny's all-night diner. The diner sat on the corner of 5th and Adams, a place that looked like it had been designed in 1987 and nothing had changed since then. The checkered floor was black and white with a pink stripe running through it. The walls were covered in old photographs of people no one remembered. The booths had torn vinyl seats that had been patched with tape so many times the patches had patches. When Mia arrived at 8:15 a.m. for her morning shift, the diner had 3 customers. An old man in a wheelchair who came every morning at 8 a.m. and ordered 1 cup of black coffee, which he nursed for exactly 2 hours. A couple that looked like they had not slept, their eyes hollow, their bodies angled toward each other like magnets pulling at opposite poles. And a woman alone in the corner booth, a stack of bills in front of her, a calculator, and the expression of someone doing mathematics that would not add up no matter how many times you calculated it. Mia clocked in at 8:30. Her manager, a man named Steve with a mustache that had never been clean, was in his office counting the register from the night shift. "You're early," he said, not looking up. "I know," Mia said. She pulled on her apron, white, stained with the evidence of 1,000 shifts, and tied it around her waist. "Kitchen got the special down to $6.99, Steve said. Eggs, toast, home fries." "Okay. We're short this week. I'm cutting your hours." Mia stopped moving. "What do you mean cutting my hours?" "I mean you're getting 20 hours instead of 48. The register's been down. Nobody's coming in. I can't pay for staff I don't need. 20 hours instead of 48. That meant approximately $160 instead of $420. Steve, I'm not arguing with you, Mia. You know how this works. If business picks up, hours come back." What Mia wanted to say was that her rent was due in 5 days. What she wanted to say was that her daughter needed shoes. What she wanted to say was that she could not exist on $160 a week. What she said was, "Okay." By 3:22 in the afternoon, Mia had worked 6 hours and earned $32.70 in tips. She had given $5 to Raj, the dishwasher, because he had asked her for the money in a quiet voice and because she remembered what it felt like to need $5 as if your life depended on it. She had taken one of the leftover sandwiches from lunch, ham and mustard on white bread, and hidden it in her apron to bring home to Emma. She had not eaten. The diner was nearly empty. The old man with the wheelchair had left. The couple had paid and disappeared. And the woman with the bills was still in the corner booth, still calculating, her jaw moving like she was grinding something between her teeth. Mia was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in. Not tall, but built like a fire hydrant. His suit cost more than everything in Mia's apartment. His watch was gold. His shoes had a shine that seemed to contain whole universes. This was Derek Collins. He did not order anything. He walked straight to the back of the diner, where the kitchen opened into a narrow hallway that led to the alley. Raj was there, taking out the trash. "You owe me money," Derek said. His voice was pleasant. That was the worst part. It sounded like he was commenting on the weather. "I don't know what you mean," Raj said. Raj was 19 years old. He had come from Guatemala 6 months ago. He spoke English like someone learning a song by listening to it through a wall. "Your cousin borrowed $5,000, Derek said. He said you would guarantee it. He left town. Now you're here, and you're going to work it off. He's my cousin. I didn't agree to nothing." Derek's hand came up so fast it seemed to teleport. He grabbed Raj by the shirt and slammed him against the kitchen door. That was when Mia stepped into the hallway. She did not think. There was no moment of decision. There was only the sound of a young man's skull hitting metal and the way he made a sound like a bird with a broken wing, and her body moved forward to block Derek's other fist. "Stop," she said. Derek's fist stopped exactly where it was, 3 inches from her face. He looked at her like she had suddenly begun speaking in a language made of nonsense syllables. "You work here?" he asked. "Yes." "Then this isn't your business." "He's one of us," Mia said. "He works here." "That makes it my business." Derek studied her for a moment. His eyes were the color of wet concrete. His smile appeared on his face like a scar appearing on flesh. Then he lowered his fist. "My name is Derek Collins," he said. "Your employee will be working to pay off his debt. I suggest you tell him not to make any more mistakes." He walked out. Mia helped Raj up. His eye was already beginning to swell. His shirt had a tear in it shaped like a hand. "Thank you," Raj said, his voice smaller than before. "Don't thank me," Mia said. "I think I just made a very serious mistake." The diner's clock read 3:22 in the morning when Mia Wells finished counting the bills in her apron pocket for the 3rd time that hour. $17. That was all. $17 and 5 days until Derek Collins expected his money, until the foreclosure notice on her kitchen table became real, until Emma's school uniform stopped fitting and she would have to tell her daughter that sometimes there wasn't enough. The checkered floor beneath her feet was sticky with spilled coffee and something darker. The neon sign outside hummed like a dying animal, casting everything in shades of sickly pink. 3 a.m. at the Silver Cup Diner was the loneliest hour in Miami, just her, Raj washing dishes in the back, and the weight of $300,000 in debt that didn't belong to her but had somehow become her entire world. She moved through the empty booths with the mechanical precision of someone who had stopped hoping for tips an hour ago. Her uniform hung loose on her frame. She had lost 18 pounds since the funeral, though she tried not to count. The scar tissue on her back, hidden beneath the white polyester, throbbed when she was tired. It always throbbed. 8 years of hidden bruises had taught her that some pain lived in places nobody could see. In the kitchen, Raj was moving slowly. His hands shook as he scrubbed a pan. He was 21 and spoke English like he was translating it directly from his bones. She had hired him 2 months ago when nobody else would take the risk. Illegal, they all said. Too much paperwork. Too much liability. But Mia had learned long ago that the most dangerous people were the ones who followed rules that hurt everyone else. The back door opened without warning. Derek Collins filled the doorway like a stain spreading through water. He was 53 but carried himself like someone half his age, all lean muscle and controlled menace. His suit had been tailored in some place that charged prices Mia couldn't even imagine. His shoes cost more than her car payment. His eyes were the color of wet concrete, and they moved across Raj's face with the precision of a man assessing property he was about to foreclose on. "Your cousin borrowed $5,000, Derek said. His voice was smooth, almost conversational. The kind of smooth that made your spine understand you were in danger before your mind caught up. He said you would guarantee it. He left town. Now you're here, and you're going to work it off. Raj's hand stopped moving. The pan slipped, caught the edge of the sink, didn't break. He's my cousin. I didn't agree to nothing. Derek's hand came up so fast it seemed to materialize out of the air itself. He grabbed Raj by the collar and slammed him against the kitchen door. The sound was small, horrible, the sound a bird makes when its wing is caught in something. Raj made that sound. His eye socket met the metal frame. Mia did not think. There was no calculation, no moment where she weighed her safety against someone else's. Her body moved forward like she was obeying a law that ran deeper than survival. She stepped between them, and Derek's other fist stopped exactly 3 inches from her face. The knuckles were heavy with rings. The cold air off his hand touched her skin like a threat. "Stop," she said. Derek looked at her like she had begun speaking in a language that didn't exist. He slowly lowered his fist. "You work here?" he asked. "Yes." "Then this isn't your business." "He's one of us," Mia said. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. 8 years of hiding things had taught her how to hide fear. "He works here." "That makes it my business." He studied her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, like he was calculating something. Then he smiled, and it was the smile of a man who had decided she was interesting enough not to kill tonight. "My name is Derek Collins," he said. "Your employee will be working to pay off his debt. I suggest you tell him not to make any more mistakes." He walked out. The back door swung shut. The sound of an engine turning over. The crunch of tires on gravel. Then silence. Mia helped Raj to his feet. His eye was already swelling. There was blood in the corner of his mouth. His shirt had a tear shaped like a hand. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me," Mia said. "I think I just made a very serious mistake." She didn't know that 3 blocks away, in a mansion that occupied an entire corner of Brickell Avenue, a man named Matteo Conti was receiving a phone call that would change everything. Matteo Conti was 46 years old and had not slept properly in 15 years. The insomnia had started the night his brother Antonio betrayed the family to enemies in Tampa, the night Matteo had to decide between mercy and survival. He chose survival. That decision lived in his chest like a stone that would never dissolve. He stood at the window of his office on the 23rd floor, looking out at Miami spread below him like a circuit board of light and shadow. His suit was black cashmere, worth more than most people's annual salary. A gold watch hung on his wrist, and on his left hand, he wore a silver ring engraved with words in Italian that nobody ever asked him to translate. There was a scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone, a gift from his brother's betrayal. It had faded to white, but it was still there, still visible, still true. Tony and Enzo sat on opposite sides of his desk. They had worked for him for 11 and 9 years respectively. They knew the weight of the organization, the complicated machinery of loyalty and survival that kept everything running. They did not know what Matteo had learned at 3 o'clock that morning. Derek Collins, a man who answered to his brother's spoiled nephew, had been skimming money from their operations. Derek had moved $5,000 that wasn't his to move. "Find him," Matteo said. "I want to know every place he goes, every person he talks to, every decision he makes. And I want to know by tomorrow." Tony nodded and left without speaking. Enzo lingered for a moment, then followed. Matteo turned back to the window. The city lights blurred slightly, and he realized his hands were shaking. His brother's nephew had arrived in Miami 3 weeks ago with a plan: use leverage to take control of the organization, push Matteo out, modernize everything by making it cruel. The nephew had taken Derek as his pet, his enforcer, his tool. But Derek had become unreliable. Derek had become a liability that Matteo could no longer ignore. He did not know that this liability was about to become the reason he finally learned what it meant to live instead of merely survive. The foreclosure notice sat on Mia's kitchen table like evidence of a crime she had not committed. $22,000 by the end of the month, or the house belonged to the bank. The house that held 12 years of memory, that Emma had been born in, that she had scrubbed clean at 3 in the morning when the anxiety wouldn't let her sleep. She sat in the darkness of her bedroom, not the master bedroom, but the small room where she had moved after the funeral, giving Emma the bigger space. There was a single bed, a dresser, a window that faced out onto a street where people walked past without seeing her. This was what invisible looked like. This was what it meant to be nobody. Her phone buzzed. A text from the collection agency. A text from the hospital. A text from someone who claimed to represent Evelyn Blackwell's real estate office, asking if she would be interested in selling the house before the foreclosure became official. They would give her $5,000 and take care of everything. Clean. Simple. Evelyn Blackwell owned half of Miami. She had been photographed at charity galas in dresses that cost more than Mia's entire net worth. She was a woman who had decided that the poor existed to be optimized, to be removed, to be replaced with something more profitable. She was the kind of predator that wore a smile and a string of pearls. Mia deleted the text without responding. She lay in the darkness and thought about Emma sleeping in the next room, about the way her daughter's hand found Mia's in the middle of the night, about the fact that she had no plan beyond tomorrow. At 4:33 a.m., Matteo Conti's phone rang. Tony's voice was thin, urgent. "We found him." Derek's at a late-night diner called the Silver Cup. Checking on an employee he's loaning money to. "But Matteo, there's a woman. A waitress." She stepped between Derek and the dishwasher. She looked Derek Collins in the eye and told him to stop. "Nobody does that." Matteo felt something move in his chest, something cold and dangerous that he recognized as curiosity. Curiosity was a luxury he had not allowed himself in 15 years. "Where is this diner?" he asked. Matteo arrived at the Silver Cup at 5:13 a.m. in a black SUV followed by 2 others. He wore the cashmere coat, the gold watch, the expression of someone surveying a battlefield. The diner was nearly empty, just the waitress, the dishwasher with a swollen eye, and a sense of something having happened that the space had not yet finished processing. He ordered coffee and sat in a booth where he could see her. Mia Wells was 28 years old but moving like someone older, someone tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She had dark hair pulled into a bun, eyes the color of burnt amber, and hands that carried the vocabulary of hard work in their calluses. There were faint bruises on her wrist, old ones, faded to the color of shadows. When she set his coffee down, he noticed that her uniform was too large, that she was disappearing inside her own life. "Anything else?" she asked. She did not look at him directly. "Tell me about the man with the swollen eye," Matteo said. Something flickered in her face. Fear, mostly, but underneath it something else. Courage, maybe. Or exhaustion so complete that fear had started to feel manageable. "He's new," she said. "His name is Raj. He works here. And the man who hurt him. His name is Derek Collins." She said this like she was reporting facts, like there was no personal investment in the words. "He came in looking for money. Raj didn't want trouble, but Derek decided to make some anyway. And you stepped between them." Now she looked at him. "I did." Matteo felt the cold dangerous thing in his chest expand slightly. "Why?" "Because he's one of us," Mia said. "Because nobody should have to be alone while someone hurts them." She turned away before he could respond. She moved through the diner with the kind of grace that comes from muscle memory, from doing the same impossible thing over and over until it becomes natural. She refilled coffee cups. She wiped down booths. She existed with such quiet dignity that it seemed to fill the entire space with something holy. Matteo sat there until sunrise. He did not speak to her again. But something had shifted. Something had moved in the careful machinery of his life, and he was not sure he wanted to fix it. Tony and Enzo waited in the SUV outside. When Matteo emerged, they saw it immediately, the thing that had changed in his face, the thing that looked like danger but felt like something else entirely. "We need to know everything about her," Matteo said. "Everything. Where she lives, where she works, what she owes, who she loves. I want it all by tonight." It would take 6 hours to assemble the file that would shatter everything Matteo thought he knew about his own capacity for mercy. The rain came down at 11:51 p.m. on a Tuesday, cold and relentless, turning the back alleys of Miami into rivers of dark water. Mia Wells stood in the kitchen of her apartment, if it could even be called that, this cramped studio with the leaking ceiling and the radiator that screamed like something dying, and pulled out the envelope from behind the loose brick where she kept her secrets. $17. That was all she had left. $17 and 5 days until the first payment was due. She had counted it 3 times already, as if the numbers might change, as if her fingers might somehow have made a mathematical error. But they hadn't. $17 existed in the world, and so did the notice that had arrived 2 days ago, the one with Derek Collins's signature at the bottom, the one that said she owed $300,000 or Emma would have nowhere to sleep by the end of the week. The handwritten list sat on the kitchen table, the one she'd found in the drawer beneath her husband's old tools. Line after line in his careful handwriting, debts accumulated over years like snow building into an avalanche. By the final entry, the numbers had grown so large they stopped looking like real money and started looking like punishment. Beneath that last line, in different handwriting, she'd found something worse. A note in Derek Collins's crude scrawl, foreclosure approved. Assets liquidated. Property transfer initiated. DC, with authorization from E. or Blackwell. Evelyn Blackwell. The name hit her like a physical blow. Mia had seen her once, at the lawyer's office 3 months ago, a woman in her 60s with ice-blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She'd been the one asking the questions. Where did the Wells family money come from? How much equity remained in the house? Was there insurance? And then, 6 weeks later, Mia's husband Thomas was dead. They called it a heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. The kind of thing that happens to men under stress. She'd been too grief-stricken to question it then. Now, reading these words, everything rearranged itself in her mind like a photograph developing in reverse, showing her not what was but what had always been there. Derek Collins had orchestrated her husband's death. Evelyn Blackwell had paid for it. And now they were coming for everything she had left. Emma was sleeping in the next room, small and 7 years old, her breath even and trusting. Mia had tucked her in an hour ago with a promise that everything would be fine, that Mommy was handling it, that they would never lose their home. The lie tasted like poison. At 12:33 a.m., Mia made a decision. She sat at the kitchen table and began to write. "Dear Matteo," she started, then stopped. "How did you address the most powerful man in Miami? How did you explain to him why you had to disappear?" She tried again. "I am writing this letter because I cannot say the words out loud. If I say them, I will break, and I cannot break. Emma needs me to be strong. But I am not strong. I am terrified. I am drowning. And the only way I know how to save you is to remove myself from the equation. Derek Collins and Evelyn Blackwell are using me as leverage against you. I know this because I found the proof today. They killed my husband to gain control of our assets. They are coming for me next, and they will use me to hurt you, and I cannot let that happen. So I am taking Emma and I am leaving. We will start over somewhere else, somewhere they cannot find us. It will be hard. It will be lonely. But at least you will be safe. You saved me when you didn't have to. You showed me kindness when I had almost forgotten what it meant. You made me believe that the world contained something other than cruelty and loss. For that, I will be forever grateful. But love is not enough to solve this. Love cannot undo what has been done. Love cannot protect you from what is coming. I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry. Mia." She folded the letter twice and placed it on the table. Then she went into the bedroom and began to pack. That was when the knock came. Not a gentle knock. The kind of knock that came from someone who knew that whatever barrier existed between them and entry was merely theatrical. Mia froze, her hand on the zipper of the small duffel bag that contained everything she owned that mattered. The knock came again. She moved to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in a dark coat stood in the hallway, rain dripping from his hair. Behind him, she could see the outline of another figure and then another. Her stomach dropped. They had found her. They had come for her in the middle of the night, before she could disappear, before she could save anyone. She opened the door. The man removed his coat and water cascaded onto her threshold. He was tall, mid-30s, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalogue everything about her in a single moment. His face carried a scar that ran from his left temple down toward his jaw, a thin white line against olive skin. "Mia Wells," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of voice that could destroy cities without ever raising in volume. "Yes. My name is Matteo Conti." The rain intensified behind him. The hallway seemed to shrink. She could not breathe. "May I come inside? We have much to discuss, and I would prefer not to do it where your neighbors can hear us." She stepped aside because there was no choice. Tony and Enzo filed in behind him, water pooling on her linoleum floor. For dangerous men in her tiny apartment at 1 in the morning, and Emma sleeping in the next room. "She is asleep?" Matteo asked. "Yes." "Please don't. I am not going to hurt her." He said this with such certainty that something in Mia's terror receded slightly. "I am here because you have something that belongs to me. I don't understand." He gestured to the letter on the table. "That. And also, the information you found. The documentation that proves Derek Collins and Evelyn Blackwell orchestrated your husband's death." Mia's knees went weak. "How did you?" "I have people who watch things," Matteo said. "I learned about your situation 4 hours ago. I learned about the letter you wrote 10 minutes before I arrived here. Derek Collins and Evelyn Blackwell have been enemies of my family for a very long time. What I did not know was that they had expanded their operations to include murder for hire." He moved deeper into the apartment, studying it with the detached observation of someone examining a crime scene. His eyes took in the peeling paint, the single window with the broken blind, the small pile of Emma's toys in the corner. "How much do you owe?" he asked. $300,000. 5 days. And if you do not pay, they take the apartment. Everything. I lose custody of Emma. The courts will place her with the state because they will testify that I am an unfit guardian. Derek already has connections with family services. He told me he would make sure she ended up in a home run by people he controls. Matteo stood very still. The room became so quiet that Mia could hear the rain against the windows, each droplet a small percussion in the darkness. "Where is the documentation?" he asked. She retrieved it from the drawer, the list of debts, the note about the foreclosure, and beneath it, the photocopy of the contract she'd found in Thomas's filing cabinet. Derek's signature. Evelyn's signature. An amount, $45,000 paid in 2 installments. Matteo took the papers and handed them to Tony without reading them. Tony nodded and walked back out into the rain, his footsteps fading down the hallway. "What are you going to do?" Mia whispered. "What I should have done when they first betrayed my brother," Matteo said. "I am going to make them understand that there are consequences for cruelty. There are consequences for prey." He turned to face her, and in the harsh overhead light, the scar on his face seemed to glow. "You will not leave," he said. It was not a question. "You will not run. You will stay here with your daughter, and you will wait for me to finish what needs to be finished. Can you do that?" Mia nodded because she could not do anything else. "Good," Matteo said. "Then we are agreed." He moved toward the door, and Enzo followed. In the doorway, Matteo paused. "The letter you wrote," he said. "Do not write another one like it. I did not bring you back from the edge of destruction so that you could destroy yourself in a different way. Understand? Yes, she said. He left into the rain, and Mia stood alone in her apartment, the letter still on the table, and waited for the world to change. 1 year later, the November sun hung low over Miami, painting the sky in shades of amber and rust. Matteo stood in the doorway of a converted warehouse in Wynwood, watching through the large windows as Mia arranged chairs in a perfect circle. The space had been empty 6 months ago. Now it held the weight of transformation. The House of Hope occupied 12,000 square feet. Mia had named it after the night she almost ended everything. On the walls hung photographs of women, some with bruised eyes, some with children clutching their hands, all of them standing taller than they had before. A scholarship fund bore her name. 23 women had already graduated from the job training program. 4 had opened their own businesses. She wore a cream-colored dress, not the diner uniform anymore. Her hair fell past her shoulders, no longer pulled back in exhaustion. Her hands, once raw from grease and scalding water, were smooth. But her eyes held something that hadn't changed, that particular clarity that came from surviving something most people could not fathom. "Mama, look what I made." Emma's voice pierced through Matteo's observation. The child, now 6 years old, ran toward Mia holding a construction paper collage, purple and gold tissue paper arranged in what might have been a butterfly or might have been an explosion of color. Her hair was twisted into braids that Mia had learned to do by watching YouTube videos at 2 in the morning, her hands clumsy at first, now practiced. Mia knelt down, and the collage caught the light. Emma pressed it against her chest and said, "For sad days. When you feel sad, you can look at this and remember the happy colors." Something shifted in Matteo's chest. He had learned to read bedtime stories to Emma 3 months ago. It had started as something practical. Mia was working late at the foundation, coordinating with social workers and grant applications. Emma needed someone to read her the story about the little engine that could. He had sat on the edge of her bed, his voice careful with the words, each page taking forever because he was not a man who read children's books. But then Emma had started waiting for him. She would sit by the window at 7 o'clock, watching for the black SUV that brought him to the apartment. "Is it time?" she would ask. And Mia would nod, her throat tight with something she could not name. One night, Emma had asked why his voice sounded like gravel. He had told her it was because he spent so much time being loud and angry that his voice forgot how to be soft. She had nodded as if this made perfect sense and asked him to read the part about the tunnel again, the part where the train was scared but kept going anyway. Matteo had realized, somewhere in the middle of that story, that he was no longer the same man who had watched her stand between Derek Collins and a dishwasher in a dark alley. The empire had transformed as well. The legitimate businesses now outnumbered the others. Conti Shipping operated container vessels through the port of Miami. Conti Real Estate managed affordable housing developments in 3 counties. A private security firm bore his name. None of it was illegal. All of it was intentional. She does not know yet, Tony had told him 2 weeks ago, standing in an office that smelled like leather and mahogany instead of gun oil and blood. Should I tell her about the proposal? No, Matteo had said. I will tell her. The conversation happened on a Wednesday night. Matteo drove them, Mia, Emma, and himself, to Wynwood Walls, the outdoor gallery where massive murals covered every surface. Emma fell asleep in the car. Mia held her, whispering stories about the artists who had painted these walls, about people who took empty spaces and filled them with color. They parked and walked, Emma resting heavy against Matteo's chest while Mia pointed out details, the blue in this one, the way that face seemed to look right at you, the story written in spray paint that nobody else could read. At a corner where 3 murals converged, Matteo stopped. The space between buildings formed a small alcove, and above them, 20 feet high, someone had painted a woman with her back to the viewer, arms spread wide, and behind her, the outline of a man with his hand over his heart. Do you see that? Matteo asked. Mia looked up, and in the fading light, he watched understanding move across her face. I love you, he said. The words came out rough, the way everything came out of his mouth. I have loved you since the night you stepped between Derek Collins and a man you did not know. I have loved you through every lie you believed about yourself. I love you now, in this moment, and I will love you in every moment that comes after this one. Emma stirred against his chest. Mia was silent. I cannot offer you a life without danger, he continued. I can only offer you a life where danger will find no opening. Where your daughter will walk through this city knowing that she is protected. Where you will never again have $17 in your pocket and 300,000 reasons to disappear. He lowered himself onto one knee. The concrete was rough against his leg. His men, Marco, Enzo, Tony, and a dozen others, stood at a distance, pretending to look at the murals while actually watching their boss, the man who had never knelt for anyone, kneel for her. Marry me, he said. Mia's hand covered her mouth. Emma opened her eyes and looked down at him with the clarity of children who understand things adults complicate. He's asking you a question, Emma said to her mother, with the certainty of someone who had watched enough Disney movies to know exactly how these moments worked. Mia laughed, and it sounded like a bell in the silence. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. The wedding happened in December, 3 weeks later. Not in a church. Matteo did not go to church anymore, had not since he was a boy, but in the House of Hope, the space Mia had built. 200 people filled the chairs, among them women she had helped, children who had lived in shelters, social workers and lawyers and people from the legitimate businesses who had no idea who Matteo really was. Mia wore white. Emma wore gold. The dress had been tailored by a woman Mia had hired from the job training program, a woman who had learned to sew in the 3 years since her husband had stopped breaking her fingers. When Matteo saw Mia at the far end of the room, something in his face changed. Marco, standing beside him, whispered, "In 15 years, I have never seen him look at anything the way he is looking at her." They wrote their own vows. Mia went first, her voice steady now, no trembling in it. "I came to you as a ghost," she said. "Invisible, broken, convinced that my only value was what I could provide to someone else. You saw me when I was nothing but ash. You did not fix me. You sat with me while I fixed myself. And then you loved me while I learned that I was never broken in the first place. I choose you. I choose this. I choose us." Matteo's vows were shorter. He was not a man of many words, and the ones he had were not pretty. "I have spent my life taking," he said. "From the moment I learned to close my fist, I have taken things. Power. Territory. Respect. But you taught me something different. You taught me that the only thing worth having is the thing that is given freely. You give me that every day. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of it." He slid a ring onto her finger, not diamonds, because she had asked him not to. Instead, it was white gold with a single sapphire, the color of the ocean on a clear day, the color of the sky when the storm has finally passed. Emma stood between them, holding a small pillow with 2 more rings. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to this marriage, Emma raised her hand and said, "No objections, but can we please go to the reception now? I am hungry." The room erupted in laughter. 3 months later, Mia discovered she was pregnant. She told him on a Tuesday morning, standing in the kitchen of the penthouse apartment they had moved into together, holding a white stick with 2 pink lines. Matteo looked at the stick, then at her, then back at the stick. "I do not understand these things," he admitted. "We are going to have a baby," Mia said. He took the stick from her hand with the care of someone handling something infinitely fragile. Then he set it down, crossed the kitchen, and pulled her against him. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and solid, the heartbeat of a man who had learned that vulnerability was not weakness. "When?" he asked. "September," she said. "A full baby. Like new beginnings." Meanwhile, in a federal prison in northern Florida, Derek Collins had begun his 40-year sentence. The trial had lasted 6 weeks. Mia had testified for 4 hours, her voice never breaking as she described the contracts, the signatures, the $45,000 paid in 2 installments to have her husband eliminated. The jury had taken 90 minutes to convict him. Evelyn Blackwell had lost everything in a different way. The scandal had destroyed her social standing. Her businesses were under investigation. She had been arrested 3 months later, charged with conspiracy and money laundering. Her mugshot circulated through every Miami news outlet. The woman who had built her identity on exclusivity and superiority now sat in a public holding cell, waiting for trial. Both villains had paid. Not with death, because death would have been merciful. Instead, they paid with the slow annihilation of everything they thought made them important. This story teaches us something essential about the architecture of our lives. Mia Wells did not find salvation in being rescued. She found it in standing up. She found it in choosing herself. The rescue came later, yes, but it came because she had already decided that she was worth saving. Every day we choose between fear and trust, between closing ourselves off and opening our hearts. Mia chose to trust the man who watched her from the shadows. Mateo chose to love the woman who stood between him and his own darkness. Together, they built something that no amount of money or power could have purchased, a home. Not a place, but a space where two broken people learned that their brokenness could become the foundation for something whole. How did Mia's story make you feel? What would you have done if you were in her position? What would you have done if you were Mateo, watching her stand tall despite everything? Please leave a comment below and share what is in your heart. Every comment you leave is a precious source of motivation that helps us continue creating these stories. If this story touched you, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with the people you love. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you again in the next video.